Good afternoon, and welcome to Associated Black Charities webinar series, Equity at Work. We're so excited to host all of you for this webinar learning opportunity today. We host Equity at Work because we do realize that workplace discrimination is something that keeps our communities from experiencing success and opportunity in the workplace. And we like to call it out, we like to talk about it, we like to talk about resources to navigate it, and also for allies who join us we like to talk about how you can step up to help us mitigate some of the obstacles that have been built in workplaces due to structural racism. And today I'm so excited to be talking about how professionalism polices Black men. We know that professionalism standards are often positioned as neutral guidelines that define workplace behavior and conduct and culture, but in practice, they are anything but neutral. For Black men specifically, these standards tend to frequently be applied in ways that scrutinize, that limit, and that police more harshly than others. We're talking about dress codes and tone and communication styles and expectations around behavior that can be interpreted through biased lenses. And what is seen as assertive in one person is labeled as aggressive in another, and confidence shows up as defiance, and presence becomes a threat. And so today we're excited to unpack all of these things. With Equity at Work, we've previously held sessions on the angry Black woman stereotype, and today we get to talk specifically to Black men about Black men. So when I thought about who we should have with us on this webinar, who do I know that shows up unapologetically them in workplace settings and in all settings, I could not help but reach out to our esteemed panelists that I'm going to ask to join me on camera at this time.
Hey, Chrissy, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're so excited to welcome both Corey Bailey and Haki Ami to today's webinar as we're going to talk about how professionalism, the concept of professionalism, polices Black men. And so I would like to give each of you the opportunity to introduce yourselves. We're going to start with you, Dr. Haki. Ask you to just introduce yourself and talk about why you're here, why this topic resonated with you, and what you hope we can accomplish today.
Certainly, thank you very much, and greetings to you and to the ABC family and to my brother Corey. Appreciate you joining. Dr. Haki Ami here, the Success Scholar. So, principally, my experiences, that kind of shaped me coming from Baltimore. Uh, I went directly into the United States Navy, and so I was able to see a lot of meet a lot of different people and from different aspects of life. And so, that opened me up early in my career to a world of, the racial dynamics, the economic dynamics, and, being, um, as I continue to position myself throughout life, growing up here, coming back to Baltimore, very early, experiencing this what I believe is job discrimination in certain spaces. I felt qualified for various positions and was turned down for various positions. And I, still currently work in a setting that is semi-military like, but, I've had to, experience racial, um, I would say hostility. And so, I felt I dealt with that in a most strategic way that I can elaborate a little bit more on it. But I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Corey, welcome.
Great to be here, Chrissy. Thanks, Dr. Ami, for that introduction. For those that I don't know on the webinar, my name is Corey Bailey, former CEO of Upsurge Baltimore and Chief Ecosystem Officer at the Greater Baltimore Committee. Currently working on a project that would help leaders around Baltimore have more relational infrastructure, build some trust, and collaborate better. I think once we get to know one another as human beings and see the talents and experiences that we all bring into a collaborative process, then we can all work better together. The reason why this conversation is really important to me is throughout my life. I too, I'm originally from Durham, North Carolina, a place that's not unlike Baltimore, but experiences challenge with racism. Um, I would say for me, it started at school ages, where curiosity became distraction, and where being adventurous was seen as not being focused. So I think these themes and these conversations really go all the way back to, our introduction to this country and not trying to build us into entrepreneurs or builders or owners in the corporate world or in the business landscape, but into productive workers. And so a lot of those stereotypes and tropes that we have to deal with sort of stem from that. And so I'm interested in sort of unpacking that as it relates to my own experience, both in corporate America and in the startup world, and just having a nice, robust conversation about what the future might look like in terms of how we see one another, and how we really do some meaningful work together without some of those othering stereotypes that get in the way of that progress.
Absolutely. So we're going to unpack it all hopefully today. And wherever I don't go, I want you all to pull me in those directions because this
Mhm.
conversation really is about you and for you. And I love the fact that I see so many men have logged on to the webinar today, which tells us that this, hyper scrutiny sometimes that Black men face by being more closely judged and observed, specifically in work settings, is an important conversation to have. I want to, before we start on like some of the stereotypes and things, I want to know how it landed for you both to hear me say that I interpret both of you as unapologetic. Was that shocking or surprising? Do you feel like people receive the two of you specifically that way by how you show up physically?
Well, so I've become like diplomatic and tactful and strategic, and but I also I have that level of consciousness and that fighter spirit that I've had for decades, and that comes from, first, I would say, the experiences in Baltimore. Uh, just being angry, right? But that anger, I chose to move towards wisdom, and that comes from studying and always having a level of conscious awareness of my environment, but also realizing that when you become powerful, as a Black man, and inside yourself, because we cannot allow for other people to determine our who we are, who how powerful we truly are. So I've had to just understand the environment, and every fight is not, so it comes from knowing that we are still going to have to battle. We are going to have to fight. We're going to have to organize, but we have to know who we need to fight against at particular times, and what spaces, for instance, um, you know, do we have to fight, and the knowledge that we gain from our mentors and those who have come before us can give us and guide us in terms of how you do these battles in certain spaces. So, but
Mhm.
yes, that's along the line of who I have been thus far in life. Mhm.
Yeah. Corey?
Yeah, and I'll double down on Dr. Ami's statement. I mean, I fully receive you introducing me that way, because I haven't always felt that way throughout my life and career. This is my fifth lock journey, and at least two of those journeys, I chose to cut my locks because I was either moving to a new city or starting at a new workplace, and I wanted to show up as the best version of myself. And so for me to even internalize that the best version of myself had anything to do with my physical appearance,
Mhm.
that is something that now at age 47 that you learn over time. The way you show up and the value that you bring into any engagement in any work setting, and just in life is internal. It's not uncommon for Black men and Black women to be asked about their hair, about their appearance, whether they're wearing sneakers to work or have natural hairstyles, or, I've had people ask me, how long do you plan to grow your hair? And that is not a
Mhm.
question that I ask other people, right? So
Mhm.
it really is, as Dr. Ami said, over the course of your life, you recognize the value that you bring. those small and incremental fights that you can fight, and then ways that you can sort of, as you get older, be a voice for younger people that are, or a model for younger people to look after. And so I fully received that. And it's something that I have prided myself on doing here in Baltimore, is just showing up as my full self. And have thanked Baltimore for, because I have been received for the value that I bring and not just the way I look.
Hmm.
Sure.
So let's name some things. And some of these things are going to cross over to experiences that Black women face specifically in professional settings. Some of the labels that Black men may receive unconsciously or consciously in work settings. The aggressive label, right? That sometimes our conviction or passion can be misread as hostility or intimidation. And that whole intimidating presence thing, right? Like whether it's physical stature or just bias around being Black and being a male, that comes up. The not a culture fit, right? Like that maybe we don't always fit into the proximity to traditional cultures in workplaces. I thought when I did some of the research, it was interesting that it came up with this athlete or entertainer bias. That kind of like threw me,
Mhm.
and I thought about you, Corey, specifically, but like that's a stereotype that those are the industries that our Black men are stereotyped to be traditionally really good at, but not necessarily a lot of the more academia related and corporate related disciplines. And then this whole concept that you all are emotionally limited, that expressions of emotion are emasculating, right? Like that you can't
Mhm.
respond and show up with pure emotion because that's judged more harshly or critically. And I'm going to add one more that wasn't in the research, and I don't know why it wasn't in the research, but Black men we know tend to be over sexualized in the workplace as
Mhm.
well as other settings. So when we talk about those things that Black men are facing in life, but also in the workplace, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can start with that. Having had a brief professional career playing football. And I'm
Oh.
going to take it back to what you just mentioned about being over sexualized. And again, that happens at very young ages. As your body starts to develop, you're in the classroom or in a setting, and teachers start to treat you like a man, even if you're still a boy.
Mhm.
You're still learning, you're still being curious, you're still asking questions. All the while, they're seeing you more as a grown-up than they are some of your classmates and counterparts. And so it tracks. And people forget the ways that we learn the best is through experience. And experience to me means like doing it, having your hands in it. I think that we learn more about how to engage with other humans on the playground than we do in the classroom, because that is an embodied experience. We get to be out there navigating some of the complexities of communication, of how other people feel when things happen to them, and not just the intellectual pursuit of learning in the classroom. So for me, the two things that I loved growing up were sports and technology. I couldn't get enough of both of those things. I was just fascinated by the world of innovation and tech. And anytime I got to be on a field, I mean, I lettered in four sports in high school. I ran track, I
Wow.
played baseball, basketball, football. I just needed to move my body. I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I'm pretty sure that's in there somewhere, because I just needed to move around. And so when you get into a classroom setting where you do express emotions, you do want to get up and move around, and in the teacher's eyes be disruptive, in your eyes just move some energy. It's why we start to, navigate towards professions where we can be our full selves, where we can have some autonomy, where we can have the ability to express ourselves and, be gentle and help up an opponent from the turf after being aggressive and knocking him down there, right? Or jumping up and down with joy, and that's expected, or crumbling to the ground in agony, and having that full range of motion or of emotion that we all hold within us. But that is not what is accepted in corporate America or in the professional workspace. You're supposed to put yourself in this tight, little, neat box that other people aren't afraid of or isn't disruptive, and it limits you from being the full range of who you're supposed to be. So, or who you are, have the God given ability to be. So I think that stereotype sticks because those are the professions that allow us to be our full selves. And if we felt like we could be our full selves in the corporate setting, many more of us would want to lean in that direction.
Hmm.
Right.
So, Haki, hearing what Corey just said, what does that do to career opportunity? What does that do for promotional opportunity? What does that do for inclusion in workplaces when you cannot express the fullness of who you are?
Mm. I want to encourage everybody to read Dr. Randall Pickett's book, uh, Black Faces in White Places. So, Dr. Randall Pickett, many of you he's from Jersey, Rutgers guy, but he um, he was one of the winners of Donald Trump's Apprentice program.
Hmm.
But some of the things that he discussed in terms of the corporate. I mean, he's you know brilliant brother who's been, and he's very dark skinned if you know him, Chris. But
Yeah.
so of course you may know the brother, but he's unapologetically who he is, right? And one thing, you know, there's a level of fear. We have to understand that for the uninformed, uh, you know, leaders of various races, I'll say white people generally, they generally have this level of fear of black power, right? And it came out throughout the Obama administration. People shouting them down, saying, shut, telling them shut up, while he was doing a speech, or yelling at him while he was doing a speech. And so we see these types of things and we reflect, for instance, on ourselves in terms of how we move in this society, the disrespect that we have been shown. And ultimately, I believe these microaggressions, there's a cumulative effect on our psyche, which could uh, sort of stifle our competence, right? Our confidence, shall I say, as well. And so, with that, what we have to do is always internalize our greatness, always internalize our skills, always work productively to create the right skills so that we can stand in our own power independently of any accolades or any position that we so-called have, because there is, for instance, there's human dignity, that all of us, must internalize within ourselves. There's a level of self-respect that we have to create, everywhere, not being overbearing, but also understanding that this is how you're gonna treat with me. And Kristen, you had a conversation about, I mean, and people, male, female, we had a conversation about somebody like ignoring you at one particular time,
Happens
or
all the
something to
time.
that effect. Yeah, right. And so, it's just sometimes we have to show up and say, I'm like here, and that's like something that I can do. I can do this particular job. So that's what I'll just say. Thank you, Brother
Yeah.
Coy.
Well, you brought up the psychological and social impacts of having to face, these structural systems that are not necessarily built for Black men to succeed. Assuming that even if you're free today, that there's been some point you've had to code switch or you have code switched, like I have continually. Um, let's talk about this pressure to overperform so that we can counter
Mm,
assumptions about Black men, or the emotional exhaustion that comes from that. You mentioned like second guessing your competence, and then how your innovation and your brilliance is stifled due to fear of being misinterpreted. Let's talk a little bit
right.
about that, the effects on you as the Black man and the professional, and the effects on the company.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because one of the reasons that I've been in the startup world for as long as I have been is because I experienced some of that, Chrissy, myself, in corporate America. You know, whether it comes to advancing in that setting or having your ideas taken seriously, a lot of the times we know that the more voices you can bring to the table, the more creative you can be collaboratively, the ways that you can challenge your own mental models and see people's different perspectives and get their lived experience. whatever output that you have from that type of engagement is always going to be better if you only have one person working on a problem, or one set of individuals working on a problem, and this goes all the way back in our country's history. We're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. That document was signed on July 4th, 1776 by 56 white men, right? I mean, those ideals, as noble as they were not practiced. The promise of that document were not being practiced at that time. All the way up until our brother Frederick Douglass had his famous address, what is your Fourth of July to the black man, right? And his answer was, it's the day in the year that reminds us the most of the violence and sort of harm that has been done to us. And so you bring that into modern day, and your ideas are not being heard, your opportunity for advancement is not there. And it doesn't just hurt us individually, as individual contributors. It hurts the teams that we're a part of, it hurts the departments that we're a part of, and it overall will hurt the company, in terms of innovation and advancement. Now, there have been times when a singular voice or a singular idea has pierced through and been able to make a difference, but not often enough. And to bring it back to the world that I'm in now, even in the startup world for the last 15 plus years, 95% of venture capital goes to one demographic, and that's white men. And every room that I get in, I challenge the room and ask the question, do you believe that 95% of the best ideas that have a chance to go to market come from that
Mm,
demographic?
mm,
And if anyone, says yes to that question, then I would challenge sort of, their ideals on, who contributes to the greatness of this country and to the
mm,
world. And so we have to do a better job of recognizing where those imbalances live, why they're in place that way, and then structurally and systemically start to change those so that the best ideas, the best people working on those ideas get to market,
mm.
and our country thrives for it, no matter what that individual looks like.
Hmm. Haki, any thoughts?
Um, well, I'll go to the next question.
Yeah. Well, I want
I'm
to talk a
just
little bit
into
about,
to
because
yeah.
oftentimes when we talk about professionalism, it does
Mm,
default to appearance,
right,
and
right,
I
right.
think about some of the events that I attend that are where I'm a minority in the room as a woman and as a black woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I often remark how everybody's wearing the same taupe, navy, black, and gray in the room.
Mm,
Not a lot of
mm-hmm.
creativity and stuff. And then Corey, you spoke about the locks and Haki. I've seen you in full African attire in
Mm-hmm.
professional settings. So let's talk a little bit about this concept of executive presence and what that means to us. Is it exclusionary to us? Hair, dress, presentation standards frequently line up with Eurocentric norms and what's acceptable. But you all, and I'm generalizing now, black men, we are wearing the sneakers with the suits. Y'all got this
Mm-hmm.
new quarter zip culture I'm hearing about that's going on, right? And
Pass.
track suits and all of that. Can you be taken seriously and can you compete in a room where professionalism excludes showing up like that?
Right. Well, what I will say, yeah, I'll add on to that, and thank you for acknowledging my
Your
Afrocentric
flair, we're gonna call it
attire.
flair.
Right, 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 right. Well, and sometimes I got a shirt and tie. It de- it depends on how. I mean, like, so I have a brand. I have a global African brand. So I'm always just strategically knowing like how do I show up? I mean, I think about the planet, the whole planet, not just my own little environment. And so I'm not, being held by people's perceptions because my vision for, the global collective as well as business. It's like, look, I'm not y'all can't stop me like that. Like I'm not going to be held in place. But one particular point I wanted to make, I had locks like years ago, like for a long time, and I mean I cut them. I cut them due. to, I mean, my occupation, right? But, and, people kind of was like, yeah, man, you cut your locks. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, some black folks, they just, being stupid. But, sometimes, you have to do certain things, in this society, right? And I'm not trying to say whether who, cut their locks or not, but, and I've come to learn, for instance, that, I mean, we can still be who we are, like, even in various types of clothing, right? So I'm not like, saying everybody got to wear African clothes all the time and, to be authentic, right? And so, but ultimately, when we, have value in ourselves, and people used to talk about how, what's his name, Russell Simmons used to like kind of go to different business meetings, but that was like his brand. He was branding like hip hop culture, right? And so ultimately understanding, and not limiting yourself. I always tell people, and Dr. Randall Pickett created this concept called entrepreneur. Always, like whatever occupation you have, your job, that's your partner, that's your investor, right? They not like, don't think of it like as like you doing the job a favor. Like we are partners. Like, and so that's where the self-pride and the self-empowerment and self-esteem comes in, where you can know that you are an asset and you have value and skills that should be respected and appreciated. So that's
No
my
matter
say.
how you
Thank
show
you.
up. Okay. All
Right,
right,
right, right.
Corey,
Appreciate it.
any thoughts? Can we compete when we are that authentic?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talked about like the curse of overperforming as well. Like, in order to sort of suppress the idea that you can't climb the ladder or compete, you just show up day after day, put the work in, and really, really overperform. And this is something that my parents used to say, right? You have to work twice as hard to get half as far. A lot of us internalize that, and it can lead to some pretty unhealthy habits, right? Overworking, burning yourself out, not setting proper boundaries for yourself in terms of how you care for yourself versus how much you pour into the work in the workplace. And so it's something to be mindful. And you can only learn through experience of that. I'm guilty of that myself, right? Of saying, I'm going to make it undeniable that I'm the right person for this promotion, or that I'm going to win, this sales competition, or I'm going to be the top salesperson by the end of this year. I
Mhm.
always did it as myself, being mindful of the relationships that I was building, and to maintain my integrity. But it was there, setting up the workday late at night, getting my territory lined up, making sure that I was above reproach. And I will say this, when you're younger, you do kind of focus on your external value and appearance, I think I was one of the first ones in my friend group to like change my voicemail to where it sounded super professional, and got teased for it. I was sort of the first in my friend group to like give up the baggy clothes and go for a little bit more of a fit cut. But I'm gonna throw up my um, screen right here. I look great in a suit. Okay, so I'm gonna show up as
Wait, what
myself.
happened? You went
Uh,
away. Oh,
well,
there you
I
go.
threw that up on purpose. I wanted
Oh,
people to know, like, I feel like my full self, whether I'm wearing a suit or whether I come in, that's another reason why I like the startup world, because it was all sneakers, jeans, and tech tees. And the way that we dressed that up was to put a blazer over that. And, I recall having one of our first annual meetings a couple of years ago, and all the corporate folks, all the civic leaders showed up. And the mandate was like, put your sneakers on. And I think one of the board members said, you guys are just so cool. And I said, you know what? We're all cool. We just give you permission to bring your cool here. Right. And I think we need more of that. We need more opportunities for people to just show up as their full selves and not just their work avatar, and like be real with other people and be a little bit more vulnerable and honest, and not just go like, what are the talking points that I really need to hit here? Who are the people that I really need to network with? Who should get my business card? Like, let's put all of that aside and like show up as ourselves. That's how deals really get done. And that's how progress really happens, is when we can sit across from the table from someone in a boardroom that we also sat across from at the dinner table. Because we trust them, we can move that whatever that project is forward, instead of sort of sizing each other up and thinking about like what's in it for me, what are they getting out of it. So I really think that there is an opportunity, especially in Baltimore, for us to like get rid of the work avatar mindset and just show up as ourselves and get some really important work done.
Hmm. I agree. Now, before we start to shift into like how do we make the ecosystem better for Black men and for everyone who feels marginalized in the workplace setting, I want to go to the left, which I'm known to do, and I want to talk about the I think tumultuous history of relationships between Black men and white women. And now in the workplace, we have more white women in leadership positions, right? Like because of our work for the women's movement and advancement and success for women, we have white women in the workplace who are in leadership positions. And I'm just wondering, as Black men, have you bumped up against that as an issue in reporting, where you've had to report to white women? Has the relationship been difficult to navigate, and how does that show up for you?
Well, I was going to say this, and thank you for mentioning that. So I had an experience. I'm going a little quick Navy story, real fast, but so I was what's called a personnel man, PN personnel, which is like a real office job, privileged job in terms of the military and working around records, et cetera, et cetera. Well, once this, uh, she was a chief, was which is called an E7, and she made warrant officer, and it was three black guys that worked with us in what's called the Educational Services office. And one time, I mean, she did it like once or twice, and we like really rebelled. She told us to shut up, like, and sometimes we and
She
one of the
made it
guys
to twice, Haki, to do
say
that?
again.
She made it to doing it twice? But go ahead, I'm sorry. I,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I
I was
mean, I guess
triggered.
when you shock, like, and this is three brothers that worked under her in a small, tiny office, like literally. And we were on an aircraft carrier, so she was a little, I guess, stressed out. All of us, we were out at sea, and so that can create like some certain types of stressors. But we kind of organized and knew that she was out of line, right? And this is where, knowing like sometimes people in positions of power, and depending upon your space that you're in, if they are out of line, you gotta, sort of start thinking like Malcolm X and Nat Turner, like what I'm saying. So it's like, okay, what is this space here? I'm going back to the 1600s. Like, what do I have to do as this man in this position to show some dignity? And so, but I think that we had it handled it adequately in terms of our responses. I mean, nobody, like you said, nobody did anything to her, but we later, she came back and apologized. And but just knowing, for instance, she's a shorter white woman, and perhaps us 6 foot, so some of us 200 pounds, 180 pounds. She may have felt like that we wasn't being as productive or whatever she created in her mind. But that was eye awakening, because I mean, and in the military it's a little different, but I don't know if people do that in civilian world, tell people to shut up, like, and then like with base, like you better and then she said, like, you better show up, shut up. So that's where experiencing things like that, you just realize, like, where are we in this time in history as black people, as black men, um, and how do we put people in a proper context of who they are, right? And that's the difficult, that's the balancing act, to correct people's behavior who may be reflecting upon their ethnic racial privilege, right? And so that's what I'll say. Thank you.
And Corey, I want to hear from you. And I'm interested in knowing, do you all as Black men approach that kind of hierarchy with more fear? Just naturally because of the history of the relationship, and then maybe some of the assumptions and th stereotypes that are made about Black men's aggression.
Yeah, I wouldn't say with more fear, but I definitely would say with more awareness, right? And you want to approach any relationship, but especially one of hierarchy like that, with mutual shared value. Like you
Mm,
got to come into it without thinking like one person is more valuable than the other. There's sort of some reciprocity there, and respect. And just given the context of the way our society and corporations are set up, obviously there are going to be reporting structures and people that are sort of higher up in the hierarchy of the organization. And so you have to be mindful of that. You have to approach those conversations carefully and with tact, and always try to position yourself as wanting things to be better, right? And I'll give a couple of examples, first from school that are kind of related to this. In the sixth grade, this is 12 years old. One of the first times I actually can remember experiencing racism, both from a white female teacher and honestly from one of my black male classmates. I remember the first fight that I got into that year was with the young man who approached me and said, "You think that you're better than me because you're in all those white kid classes."
Hmm.
And I asked him, I said, "What do you mean by white kid classes?" And he said, "The classes that I'm not able to be in." And I took stock of that and said, we all have the ability to be whatever we aspire to be. And so for him to limit himself to the set of courses that he was taking and say that I had access to a different level of courses, it made me feel a certain kind of way about it. But I did start to realize, oh, I am the only black man in this class. There is only other brown person in this class, and she is Pakistani. Why is that? And that was an academically gifted English class where on the first day, this white woman teacher said, "We're going to be more creative in here. No desks. I want you guys to find a spot on the floor, and we're going to be more creative in this classroom." One day she came in and asked everybody to get in a desk. I thought she was testing us. So I said, "Oh, she's not going to get me. We're more creative in this class. I'm going to stay in my spot." And by the time that I knew she was serious, I felt threatened. I felt unsafe. And we hear about fight or flight, but we don't often talk about freeze, right? Where you see someone in a position of authority who is challenging you or in a way that feels harmful to you, that doesn't feel good in your body. And you're like, oh my God, what do I do? I want to run out of here. I want to scream, but I'm frozen. And so, I took that opportunity to leave. My dad used to tell me, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all.
mm,
And if you feel like your emotions are gonna take over you, leave.
mm, mm,
Right. And so I left and she followed and I felt threatened. And I said,
mm,
"Where's the one place that I can go that she won't go?" I went to the men's room. I went to a stall and I sat there. The
mm,
principal, luckily, was in a civic group with my dad, a service group, and called him and said, "Mr. Bailey, I need you to come get your son." And my dad talked me out of that room. But it is one of the first memories that I have of somebody in a position of authority embarrassing me, making me feel less than the rest of the room. And I don't know, I mean, I wasn't in her head, so I don't know 100% if it had to do with me being a young black boy. Um, but you internalize things like that. It happens. And thank God for, my fourth grade teacher, Miss King, who encouraged me to be in the school play, our librarian who encouraged me to do the spelling bee that I won. I know we're going to talk
mm,
about allies and folks that are not challenging
Hmm.
black men in that way. That balance to me let me know that it is solely on the individual and how they want to approach that relationship. Because I have had some, white women teachers and leaders and especially here in Baltimore, who understand the value of bringing everybody to the table because we get
mm,
more out of that than if less people are at that table.
mm.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we do better, how we create systems and break down structures that are not being built for Black men to be safe in the workplace. Um, we already know we have a issue with Black men's safety in society. But if we just start at the workplace level and we're looking at giving advice to leaders and allies, leaders and organizations, people who have, authority and influence in these workplaces, what do we say to them? What do they do to help make this a little bit better?
Well, I'll add on to that. Well, first, I think that everyone need to when you there's a process that what is it storming, forming, and norming, right? When you come a part of a different organization. So I would believe, for instance, to, sort of soak in and observe the environment, but also, for instance, study the mission of what they believe or say that they supposed to stand for, right? And if they, certain types of behavior, for instance, are not in line with the mission, as well as your SOPs and rules and regs, standard operating procedures, whatever rules and regs you may have. Know those. I've been taught this like throughout to know the established rules and regs. Like people in my service, like I get like higher ups. I mean, they know me from other things, but when they have like civil rights type of thing, they like go get Haki. Like I mean, go get him. Like who can you reach out to? We got this issue. So um and I'm like, y'all been in longer than me, like, or y'all been like, in different spaces as well. But just knowing like your spirit, um, and knowing like what our brother Corey said, to fight a fight, and knowing like when you have to take a stand, when you have to take a stand, but also knowing like to build allies, right? And be communicative in a responsible way to where people they're gonna respect you as an individual. That's where your power is gonna come from, your wisdom in terms of how you communicate. So I'll just say that. Thank you.
Corey, any thoughts? What can people do?
Yeah. There's a framing that I used to use for my team, and I use it for myself all the time when I'm thinking about decision making, um, and where to place my energy and attention. And it's why
Mm,
before who before what, and what
mm,
before how. A lot of times we often think about progress or the workplace or the end result that we want in a business, and we jump straight to what we're going to do and how we're going to do it.
mm,
And we don't think about why we're doing it in the first place and then who needs to be involved in that. So I think that we need to start with culture and connectivity, like recognizing that we have shared values, that we all want what is in that Declaration of Independence,
mm,
to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of
mm,
happiness, right? Whatever happiness looks like for you. And I venture a guess that if you go back and ask your 6-year-old self, what does happiness look like to you? It's not being, in a 9 to 5, sitting in a cubicle every day, um, spending all your time and energy trying to make the company that you work for money.
mm,
Uh, so to me, it's about like, where are the communities that you engage with and for what
mm,
reason? How are you getting closely connected with your colleagues, with your collaborators, with customers, with partners? And you do that in spaces that aren't necessarily boardrooms or over the phone. You got to get out and get in front of people. So more engagement, more sharing meals and coffees, more meeting up with each other at the ball game, more going to visit that, Joyce Scott or Amy Sherrill exhibit at the BMA. We got to get in front of each other in the community so that we can
mm.
build trust and know that
Right.
the values that you hold as sacred, that other person also holds those same values. It's not a zero-sum game. That person wins, I lose, or he's out to get me so that he can advance. No, we're all in this thing together, whether we like it or not. And so if we start with culture and connection, I think that is the upstream version of how we get to a place where the workplace isn't a threatening place for anyone,
Mhm.
where no one is being harmed because we see ourselves in one another. And I think the second thing we do is need to take stock in what we value and what we measure. Everybody thinks that more money equals more happiness for people. And I can tell you for certain that some of the wealthiest people I know are some of the most unhappy people that I
Mm,
know. And so
mm,
we need to take stock and have a real conversation about what we value and what we measure. Um,
mm,
and the last thing I'll say is like progress is not a J curve. A lot of times it's that slow incremental climb. So if we're
mm,
thinking about how do we do this faster, how do we do this more, I would say that more is not better all the time, or faster is
mm,
not better all the time. But whatever we're measuring, let's make sure that we determine that better is better. And we do that by having leaders who are self-aware, leaders that are every day having more awareness of the different sectors and different generations of leaders and what
mm,
their experiences are, um, so that we can align and then move collectively into action. So until we get from access and awareness to alignment and action, we won't be seeing that progress if we're just spinning our wheels trying to get to know one another, and understand one another. Let's turn the page on that so that we can move collectively and get some stuff done. And better is better, not more is better, and faster is better.
Amen. So
mm,
relational, and it's all about the humanity of all of
hmm
us. I want to,
mm,
before I give you guys an opportunity to give your closing remarks, I want to talk about the Black tax because we often talk about that and how in our community we tend to be judged by people's lived experience with other Black people and interpretations of experiences they've had with other Black people. Because sometimes when we have these like in-house conversations, and it's just us here, safe space, I'm assuming it's allies and people that care about this conversation on the line. We don't talk about the fact that there are people in the workplace who are conforming to some of the stereotypes, right? Like who are behaving aggressively, who aren't being aware, who aren't building relationships, who are conforming to unconscious bias by showing up either less than excellent, less than reliable, without integrity, aggressive, reactionary, with no emotional regulation. So, as we start also being responsible for doing the work in our own community, what do you say to the brothers who might be paving a way that is more harmful than good?
Mm. Do the work. All of us have generational trauma, lived experience, um, that can put us in a place where we do feel less than, where we do sort of, for lack of a better word, give up and conform to the stereotype. My charge or my challenge would be like do the work, whether that's some regenerative practices, some fitness practices, some therapy, some men's work. We all have those things that we need to work through. And if you keep them in here, that's how they manifest as some of those
mm,
negative stereotypes. I
mm,
do want to comment also that, some of the white non-allies that are out there, they get fed these same stereotypes as well. And I just want to tell like two cases where that has happened for me. One, like I said, will learn more outside of the classroom than in sometimes. And in college, for me, engaging with people from all over the country and all around the world in their lived experience was very like helpful for me to frame, um, my idea of who I was. And I had a friend in college, a young white woman who would slide things in there like, but you're not like other black people.
Mm,
And you let that go the first time it gets said. But then when it gets repeated, the question that I asked her was, how many black people do you know well?
mm,
And she started to name people that her parents worked for, that, kind of worked in and out of their lives. And I said, let me ask the question differently. Who is your best friend that identifies as black? And she was like, that's probably you. And my question to her was, then why am I not the example of what all Black people are instead of the exception? And that just, I think, got her to start thinking, man, I need to challenge some of these tropes and stereotypes that have been ingrained in my head because he's right. The Black person that I know the most is this guy, so he should be seen as an example and not an exception. And we get exceptionalized as well in that regard. The other one is more recent and from Baltimore. I have a good friend who, works around the Lexington market area and expressed some dissatisfaction with the open air drug market. A very clear stereotype, right? That we're drug dealers and that we're always into criminal activity. And my comment to that person was people participate in the economies that are available to them. If we want people to participate in a different economy, we have to make that different economy available. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to do crime, I want to sell drugs, I want to put people
Mm,
in harm's way.
mm,
What they do say is, I want to make enough money to provide for my family,
mm,
make sure that we don't lose our house, that there's food on the table, and that every once in a while I can get a gift or share an experience with my loved ones that makes them
mm,
feel happy. And so
mm,
when you start to reframe those stereotypes for other people in those ways that they can relate to, I think that's how we move past them. So that's what I'll share on that front.
mm.
Mm. Any
Okay.
thoughts, Haki?
No, it's interesting what Brother Corey said. I had an experience, and I was just like, why am I being tried today? But someone I was working with, white guy, just low class. I mean, he used the term boy, right? And and I paused, right? I was just like, I mean, you know my name. Like, what's this about, right? And he was like, no, 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 I don't mean nothing. I don't need nothing by it. I'm just like, look, you don't do that. You simply don't do that. And he was still a little like aggressive. So I put him up on workplace violence just because, like, look, after I give you a warning, right? After I let you know, because sometimes you gotta, be fair and balanced. I mean, we this is 2000, 20, whenever this experience happened. I'm gonna let you grow up a little bit, right? Because sometimes you gotta give people that opportunity to know that you are a respectable human being that deserves respect and deserve to be spoken to like an adult, like a man, like a human. But if you continue to go down this, I mean, and we don't have like that kind of space or job like where we gotta be enemies, right? But if you go down that road, I'm just gonna have, I'm gonna have to show my Nat Turner, right? So, I mean, in a professional, educated way. Like, so that's how I'm encouraging, us to. I'm sorry, somebody's trying to call me. Let me. Um, I'm gonna encourage people to, yes, have that internet Turner inside of you, right? And know when to bring that Turner out and intellectually take some heads, right? So that's what I'm gonna say. Like, don't be, because somebody else may come behind you. And I have people in my workspace that say that somebody used the N word to him. I'm like, really? I've been in this space like 19 years and I don't see. And so I'm like, so younger people who may not know any better, they are, kind of oblivious to how to engage, right? And so this is where being a role model works for me. Thank you.
So, first of all, let me just say thank you to both of you. This has been an amazing conversation. I want to give you both the opportunity, just give a minute or so of closing remarks on the topic to those who are joining and those who will watch the playback. We'll start with Dr. Haki.
Thank you. Thank you. No, it's been great. Brother Corey, you are a gem and a leader. I certainly appreciate that. I look forward to building and dialoguing in the space of leadership with you. And to all of you who have tuned in, I would, some of you may not know me, but I would appreciate the opportunity to continue to engage and continue to uplift our community. I strive to be wherever I need to be to grow and to heal and glow in our community. And so that's what it's all about, healing our community, first healing ourselves and leveling up. And let's level up, y'all. It's time for us to level up. Thank you.
Thank you. Corey?
Yeah, Chrissy, I just want to thank you for inviting me to this conversation. Dr. Ami, a pleasure to do this with you. And I too echo that I look forward to continuing to build around the idea of leadership with you. And I think that's the word that stands out to me the most is leadership. It is not a title. It does not come with your position at your organization. It is something that is in you and that you are it's an activity, not a title. If it is an activity, that means we can all learn how to do it better, and we can all step into it with the full knowledge and value that we can bring exactly who we are to the table. And that's all that we need to do. We don't need to conform. We don't need to assimilate. We don't need to change our hair. We don't need to do anything but be the full expression of ourselves. And so that would be my message to the listeners, to the community of leaders around Baltimore. Like, we're about to enter an age where, um, the administrative and sort of tactical skills of the workplace are being reinvented and repositioned with AI. What is the internal value you bring to that work? And what are you willing to do in collaboration with others to roll up your sleeves and move things forward? And so step into leadership with that mindset. Know that your value is internal. And let's create, a region or a society where leadership is the goal, no matter what you look like or what you wear.
That's right. That's right. Thank you both so much. And thank you all for joining us today. We will be back in June where our discussion topic is recruiting Black talent, but never advancing it. And for Associated Black Charities, I am Chrissy Thornton. Thank you for joining.